You're almost asleep. The room is dark. Your phone's face down. And the day is finally, actually over. Then your brain does something strange. It opens a file you didn't ask for. Not your keys, not tomorrow's meeting. Just one sentence you said years ago in a hallway or a group chat that doesn't even exist anymore. You remember your own voice, the faces around you, that small drop in your stomach. For a few seconds, the past finds a way to stand in the room with you. Here's the odd part, though. It's not that you remember it. It's how alive it still feels. Something nobody else on Earth is thinking about right now arrives in your head like breaking news. So why does this happen? Why does the brain wait for the one quiet hour in your entire day to hand you a memory you never asked for? The easy answer is that it was embarrassing. True, but that's only the surface. Embarrassment isn't just a bad feeling. It's a social alarm. Your body's way of saying something about how you looked might actually matter. For most of human history, that mattered more than it sounds like it should. Belonging wasn't a nice extra. It was survival. So your brain got very interested in one question. How am I being seen? That question does useful work most days. It's why you apologize, why you learn a room's unwritten rules, why you notice the temperature of a conversation shifting before anyone says a word. The same system can also misfire and treat a tiny social scratch like a real wound. Here's where it gets more specific than the brain remembers bad stuff. Neuroscientist James McGaugh spent decades studying why some memories stick and most don't. And his research keeps pointing to the amygdala, a small structure that responds to emotional arousal and helps decide, almost in real time, which experiences get stored with extra strength. A normal Tuesday fades. The moment your face went hot in front of a room doesn't. It gets tagged, filed under Remember This, and the tag doesn't come with an expiration date. Years pass. Everyone else moves on. You can still pull up that memory with the same emotional color it had the day you lived it, because you're not remembering it like a historian. You're remembering it from inside the person who wanted to disappear. And from inside that person, the room felt enormous. This is where your brain plays a quiet trick on you. Because you were so aware of yourself in that moment, you assume everyone else was just as aware. You felt the spotlight, so you imagine the spotlight was real. Psychologist Thomas Gilovich actually measured this. In one well-known study, he had people put on a t-shirt with an embarrassing photo on it, walk into a room full of strangers, then guess how many people had noticed and could describe it afterward. Participants guessed close to half the room. The real number was about half of that. Gilovich called it the spotlight effect, and it shows up again and again in his research. People overestimate how much others notice and remember them, often by a factor of 2. That gap exists because you have information nobody else has. You remember the heat in your face, the panic, what it felt like from the inside. Everyone else in that room was mostly busy running their own private broadcast, wondering if their hair looked strange, replaying what they'd just said, checking whether they'd sounded too quiet or too loud. Everyone carries a spotlight. Most of the time, it's pointed inward, at themselves, not at you. It's the same reason a small stain on your shirt can feel like the only thing anyone in the room could possibly be looking at, while the room itself is mostly looking down at its own shoes. If hidden mechanics like this one interest you, subscribing means you won't miss the next explanation. So why does this particular memory choose tonight, of all nights, to show up? During the day, your attention has somewhere to go. Messages, traffic, other people's problems wearing your name. At night, the room gets quiet, and the outside world shrinks down to almost nothing. Harvard researchers Matthew Killingsworth and Daniel Gilbert once tracked thousands of people's thoughts in real time and found something worth knowing. Minds wander during nearly half of all waking hours, and that wandering tends to drift toward whatever's still emotionally unresolved. Take away the noise, turn off the lights, put the phone face down, and there's finally room for the file your amygdala tagged months or years ago. That's usually where reflection would help. You'd remember something, learn from it, maybe laugh at yourself a little, and move on. But there's a different mode the brain can slip into instead. One researchers call rumination, circling the same painful scene without ever landing anywhere new. Psychologist Susan Nolan Hoeksema spent much of her career studying exactly this, and her work found that repetitive, passive replaying doesn't resolve distress. Most of the time, it just prolongs it. Part of what keeps the loop running is the specific question you're asking yourself. Researchers studying how people process distressing memories, including Kate White and Jenny Wild, found something worth noticing. Asking abstract questions like, "What does this say about me?" produces more intrusive replays than asking concrete ones like, "What actually happened?" The abstract version quietly turns a fact into a verdict. "I said the wrong thing" becomes "I looked stupid," and eventually, they saw the real me. There's actually a useful line here between two feelings people tend to blur together. Embarrassment is about something you did, a mistake that landed wrong. Shame is about something you supposedly are. Once a memory slides from the first into the second, your brain treats it less like an event and more like a permanent fact. And that's exactly when it wants to keep reviewing it. The review can feel like problem solving. It's usually closer to turning a key in a lock that isn't attached to any door. So here's the actual payoff. The part worth staying up for. That room, 3 or 10 years ago, was never as big as it felt. Gilovich's numbers say it plainly. Whoever you think still remembers your mistake almost certainly doesn't, or remembers it as a blur instead of a headline. The spotlight was mostly yours. You built it, you lived inside it, and some part of you is still paying rent on a room nobody else ever moved into. None of this means every version of this feeling is small, and it's worth being honest about that. If a memory keeps you up regularly, feels traumatic rather than just cringeworthy, or starts bleeding into how you function during the day, that's a different thing than an old embarrassing sentence, and it deserves real support from a professional, not a video. For most people, on most nights, what's actually happening is smaller and more ordinary. An old alarm that's still ringing long after the danger left. So next time the file opens on its own, the wrong joke, the bad wave, the message sent to the wrong person, you don't have to fight it, and you don't have to pretend it never happened. You can let your body do its brief, uncomfortable thing, and then ask a better question than the one your brain reaches for by default. Not, "What does this prove about me?" but, "Would I judge someone else this harshly for the exact same thing?" Picture a friend making your mistake. You wouldn't build a monument to it. You'd probably forget it by lunch, and if they brought it up months later, apologizing all over again, you'd tell them honestly that you don't even remember what they're talking about. The room gets quiet again. The phone stays face down. The memory might still show up tonight, or some other night. Smaller now, though. More like an old label on a box you don't have to keep opening. Your brain didn't bring it back to prove you're broken. It brought it back because once it confused embarrassment with danger. Slowly, it can learn the difference. If finding the hidden machinery behind ordinary moments like this one is your thing, subscribe for more of it. There's another video on this channel about what happens when your mind goes quiet in a very different way. The strange feeling of watching yourself from the outside, and what your brain's resting state is actually doing when nobody's watching. That one's next.